Now that we have Yewdux set up and working across components and across routers, let's see if we can set it up for a form. Specifically, this is probably where we're going to use it the most often. We have some input that a user is going to put in, maybe through text fields or pretty much anything else. We want to store that into the centralized state so that the way later on we can do something with it, either display that to the screen, do some math on it, or use an API call and send that to a server somewhere, which the API call stuff we're going to do later in the course. For right now, we just want to store this into the store and maybe display it to the screen. So let's update what we have here and change our counter to be a form and display to display that data. So coming back into our code here, I'm going to come into the store and we're going to update this to now just store what we want to. So in this case, let's pretend that this is like a username and password login field. So we're going to have a pub username, and that's going to be a string, and a pub password, which is going to be a string. Now, it's a good idea after you store the password to then reset that afterwards, but that shouldn't be a problem because you could just, after you do the API call, reset the password to be just an empty string, and that should be fine for us. We can also store an option here and set it to be a none as soon as we're done with that. That's another perfectly fine option. Okay, so I don't need to implement default manually for this. We're going to let that happen on its own. The init is going to remain the same. So now, let's see, in our main library, I don't need to load these all up quite as often as we were doing before. I'm going to go ahead and I don't need the router for this. I just want to have our counter and display count. So I'm actually going to change counter to login.rs. And where's our count? Oh wait, I want this in here. So we have it auto updated login here, but and then counter is still set there. I want this to now be just update all the references to login. Okay, so this is going to be implement component for login. We don't need a message. That's going to be fine. The properties are going to be for the Yewdux store. That's also fine. We're storing those away because we need to. Let's see, in our view, right now, we don't need to display anything whatsoever. So we don't need this. We're going to have an event. I'm going to leave that off for just a second. We're going to create our form first. So let's start with H1 to login. That's going to be fine. We're going to do a input type equals text for the username. Do a placeholder equals username. We have to do an on change eventually, but for right now, let's just make sure that we're creating this correctly. So we have our input. Let's wrap these in a div too, just that they're on their own lines. Gonna duplicate this for type password. And then we're going to have a button, which we're going to label login. Okay, so while this file is okay, everything else is a little bit not. This router, I'm just going to go ahead and unmod it, which is going to make that stop carrying too much. display is looking for this count. So I'm just going to remove that, and I'm going to remove the count right here, and we're going to update this in a little bit. Okay, back to you. You're looking for router and count. Go ahead and remove you. Oh, we need use login. And so let's update with dispatch login, and we're not going to have this one displayed quite yet. All right, so everything should be fine. We now have our login, and that shows our lovely form here. So as we update these, I'm gonna want the username and the password to sort of go into state. Now the other thing here that I notice, we have the login button, but it's not really part of a form. Let's fix that too. So this should really be a form div. Now we notice that when I click this, it does refresh the page, which is something we're going to want to prevent. So let's actually set that up right now. So we're going to have a let handle form. I guess I could handle form submit. It's going to be equal to this one's just going to be a normal callback. We're going to take in the event, which this should be a submit event. Oh, but I get exactly what event that's going to be. It should let us know. And I want to do immediately an event dot prevent default, which I need it to know what type of event that is first. Let's do on submit equals handle form submit. It's a focus event. Okay, so I'm going to manually set that to be a focus event. And now in here we can do a event.prevent default. I don't need to do anything else right now with it, but we could use this to gain access to the store and then do a API call to a server. Now when I click login, it doesn't refresh the page. Okay, excellent. So step 2, I want, when I update these, to update the store. Okay, so for each input, when we do a change, I want this to put its data into the store itself. So we're going to create another 2 events. So this is going to be the handle username change. Now this one is going to be the store one. So we're going to do context props dispatch. We want a reduce callback with, because in this case it is going to be 2 of these. I get a state and event. These type of events, let's add this in here. So for this one, we're going to do on change equals handle username change. This is going to be an event. We do have to tell it what type that is, even though Rust Analyzer figured it out. It's not completely sure. Okay, so once we have that, we now need to get the actual data from that. So let's grab the username. Let username equals. Okay, so we're going to start with our event, and we're going to get the target. Now, once we have the target, that's an option. So we're going to unwrap that. We know it exists because, well, it's hard-coded in right here. That gives us an event target, which is great. It's this event tag, but it doesn't really know what this tag is. We need to do an unchecked into and turn this in to an HTML input element, which then gives us that right there. I then want the value from this. There we go, which is going to give us the string. So the actual string that's imported in. So this fun piece of code is how we're going to get access to that. We actually did this in a previous lesson for accessing form data. All right, so once we have that username here, now we're going to update our store. So let's first get, we have this username here. Let's do a, we need the dispatch, which means we need to clone this context so we can, actually we have state right here, never mind. We can just do state dot username is now set to username. All right, that should work out for us. When we handle this form submit, let's see if we can gain access to the store. So we can actually change this to be another one of these. I don't want to do a reduce callback because these are for mutations. I just want to read it. So I want to gain access to the state. So we're going to clone the context. So I'm going to do this this trick that we did before, where I open up a block here, close that block here, and we're going to return the callback from it. But first, we're going to shadow context. So that way we can now have it access to it inside of this block, and we can do a move. So after we do the prevent default, I now want to get access to this form data so we can just log out the username. So let's grab that. Username is going to be equal to context dot props dot state username. And then we'll do a glue log. Username is username. Oh, we can't do it. We can't do a clone for this one. I wonder if I can clone this. Well, you know what? We can, I can grab this state. I can grab the store. There's a couple other things we can maybe do. We can do a dispatch here. We can actually just use our internal dispatch. Actually, that won't give us access to date. That gives us access to updating it. Let's see. Maybe we can clone the state to get access to it. Otherwise, we can just use our reducer to access the store again. So let's do a context doesn't want us to clone that. We can try props.state, clone that, which means that we can just go straight to username. Cannot move out of an RC. I don't want to. I want to deref and then clone you. Oh, apparently I don't want to do that. Let's see, username, you are the full string. Can I just clone you? There we go. Okay, so I clone. Let's go ahead and change this name from context to this is the actual state. And I have it accessed there. So I clone the state, which is behind an RC, so it's perfectly fine for us to clone it. It's going to be the same object that we're looking at. We move that into this callback function here. And then we're now able to access the username, and then I clone the username out of that, so that way I don't take ownership of it out of the store. Then we can log it out. So We're going to put in username. So let's just do a bunch of random. Nothing happens right now. I click login, but now I see there is the username. Okay, let's do the password next. One more time. Now, for doing these type of things, it's a very good idea to just keep on practicing over and over and over again. It can be a little bit overwhelming at the beginning, but it can be very helpful. Just build and burn. Try it again. Don't just like fall into copy paste land, because especially at the beginning, let the muscle memory kick in. So we're going to do this for the handle password change. Okay, so this is going to be we're going to get context, props, dispatch. We're going to do another reduce callback with. We're going to get our closure in here. We're going to get the state, and we're going to get the event. Now we know that this is going to be the just an event. Inside this event, we are going to now get the password out. So password, it's going to be equal to, so event, we're going to get the target. We're going to unwrap that. We're going to uncheck this into an HTML input element, because even though the type is different, it's still an HTML input. And then we're going to get the value. Okay, so that gives us the password, and now we're just going to update the state. So state.password equals password. And last thing to do would be to set our onChange equals handle password change. Okay, great. So this should now update the password. So we can grab that password out just the same as we did here with just the same that we did here with the handle form submit. So that password is going to be state.password, and we're going to clone that. And let's just add that onto the end of this console log. Okay, so if I update this, so Brooks, my really secure password, hit login, and there we go. It's all printed out. So we can see that happening. Now, if I want to now retrieve this and display it elsewhere on the screen, we can update our display to now actually just display the form contents. So display form. So we're going to grab the username. So username is going to be equal to context dot props dot state username, and now that's a little bit upset because it's moving. So we're going to go ahead and clone this. Now I believe, can we also just do a reference to get a stir, essentially, a string slice. So let password equals a reference to ctx props state password, and then I want to now display this here. So P, we're going to use a format macro, and we're going to say username, password is that, and we'll pass in username and password. All right, so this is happy here. We're going to come back to our main component here, the lib, and we're going to do a with dispatch for display. We have mod display, display count. Okay, so it's display count. Let's update that name right here. So you're not display count anymore. You are display display form. And you'll be a display form here. So close that down. And so now we see, okay, username and password is empty. When we enter these things in, nothing comes in right away because it's a change. So when I switch over to the password, that then enters into username. So now we can see, okay, this is what that data is going to be. Now, in the old days, when we were working with front-end frameworks before we had nifty browser extensions that showed us the contents of state, this is what we did for debugging. We would create some component that would just dump the contents of the state out into like tags that we can just see. This is probably what we're going to have to do for a while until Yewdux or any of the other state management systems have some kind of browser extension that helps us debug that. So let's enter the password, that super secure password. I click away, it's updated, and then login makes that display out here. So once again, to review, this is just more practice for us adding things to a store. Our store now contains two things. Our reducers allow us to update that store and you know, store things in them. So hopefully this has been very helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.